The night my husband threw me out, winter was at its cruelest. Snow fell thick and heavy, swallowing the streets in silence. The cold pressed against the windows like a living thing, desperate to get inside. I stood in the doorway of the house I once called home, one hand clutching my swollen belly, the other shaking as I tried to hold my coat closed. I was 7 months pregnant, and it was exactly midnight. "Get out," my husband said flatly, his voice colder than the storm outside. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "Ethan, it's freezing, please. Let's talk in the morning." He didn't blink. Not once. "You should have thought about that before embarrassing me," he replied. Behind him, the living room glowed warm and golden. Our wedding photo still hung on the wall, me smiling, unaware of the future waiting to destroy me. "What about the baby?" I whispered. He laughed, not loudly, not cruelly, just empty. "That thing isn't my problem." Those words sliced deeper than the cold ever could. I reached for him instinctively, but he stepped back as if pregnancy itself were contagious. "I'll call someone," I said, my voice trembling. "Just let me stay inside until they come." Ethan shook his head and pushed my suitcase toward me. I hadn't even realized he had packed it. "You've got 5 seconds before I throw this into the snow." 5 seconds. That's how long my marriage was worth. I stepped outside. The door slammed shut behind me. And just like that, I was homeless, pregnant, and completely alone. The wind howled as I dragged my suitcase down the driveway. Snow soaked through my boots within minutes, numbing my feet. Every step felt heavier, slower, as if winter itself was trying to pull me down and bury me. My phone was nearly dead. I called my mother, straight to voicemail. I called my sister. No answer? Friends? At midnight, in a snowstorm, when your husband has just abandoned you, suddenly your world becomes very small. I walked, block after block. The baby kicked inside me, sharp and sudden, as if sensing my fear. "It's okay," I whispered, tears freezing on my cheeks. "Mommy's here." But I didn't know where here even was anymore. After nearly an hour, my legs gave out. I sat on a bus stop bench, shaking uncontrollably. My fingers were stiff, my vision blurred. That's when headlights slowed beside me. A woman stepped out of the car. She looked about 60, wrapped in a thick wool coat, her hair streaked with gray. Her eyes softened when she saw my belly. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "you'll die out here." I wanted to be strong, but instead I broke. She helped me into her car without asking questions. The heater blasted warm air that burned my frozen skin. I sobbed the entire ride. Her name was Margaret. She lived alone in a small house at the edge of town. She made me soup, wrapped me in blankets, and let me sleep in her guest room. That night, I dreamed of holding my baby and waking up with nothing. The next morning, I checked my phone. One message from Ethan. "Don't come back. I've told everyone you cheated." I stared at the screen, numb. I had never cheated, but lies spread faster than truth, especially when truth belongs to a pregnant woman no one wants to listen to. Within days, his family blocked me. Mutual friends avoided me. Even my own mother hesitated, asking, "Are you sure you didn't do something?" I had lost everything, except the life growing inside me. Margaret let me stay. Weeks turned into months. I worked part-time at a small bookstore, my belly growing heavier with each passing day. The town whispered about me, a woman alone, pregnant, abandoned. But Margaret never judged. "You're stronger than you know," she told me often. "Some storms don't come to destroy you. They come to show you what you're made of." The baby came early, a snowstorm night again, almost poetic. I went into labor just after midnight. As pain tore through me, I remembered that other night. The door, the cold, the betrayal. But this time, I wasn't alone. Margaret held my hand through every contraction, and when my daughter finally cried strong, loud, alive, I cried too. I named her Hope, because that's exactly what she was. Years passed. I rebuilt my life quietly. I saved money. I studied online. I opened a small accounting service. Clients came. Trust returned. My spine straightened. Hope grew into a bright-eyed little girl who loved snow and laughed without fear. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. Until one day they came looking for me. Ethan stood on my doorstep, older, thinner, desperate. "I made a mistake," he said, eyes darting past me into the warm home behind. His business had failed. His lies had surfaced. The child he swore wasn't his looked exactly like him. "I want to fix things," he said quietly, "for our family." I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was finished. "You threw me out at midnight," I said calmly. "Pregnant. In winter. You don't get to knock now that the storm has passed." He looked at Hope, standing behind me, holding Margaret's hand. "She deserves her father. She deserves better than the man who abandoned her before she was born." I closed the door. Softly. Permanently. Some winters freeze you. Others forge you. That night in the snow didn't end my life. It began it. Hope was only 3 weeks old when reality finally settled in. The nights were endless. She cried, often soft, desperate cries that pierced straight through my chest. I slept in short fragments, waking every hour to feed her, rock her, whisper promises I didn't know yet how to keep. Margaret helped when she could, but I knew I couldn't stay forever. I was a guest. A grateful one, but still a guest. One evening, as snow tapped gently against the windows, Margaret placed an envelope on the table in front of me. "I won't live forever," she said softly, "and you need your own ground to stand on." Inside was a small sum of money. My hands shook as I pushed it back toward her. "I can't take this." She smiled. "You already have. By surviving, that money became my first step back into the world." I moved into a tiny basement apartment, 1 room. A low ceiling. A heater that rattled like it might give up any moment. But it was mine. I placed Hope's crib beside my mattress. Every night, I watched her chest rise and fall, terrified that the world would somehow steal her too. Money was tight. I ate once a day. Sometimes less. I wore the same winter coat everywhere, even indoors, because heating cost extra. My fingers cracked from the cold. My back ached constantly from carrying Hope and exhaustion. Still, I refused to ask Ethan for help. Pride. Maybe. But mostly fear. I knew if I opened that door even a little, he would try to control the narrative again. So I stayed invisible. When Hope was 6 months old, I went back to work full-time. I left her with a neighbor, a tired woman with kind eyes and too many kids of her own. I paid her less than she deserved. She never complained. At work, people avoided personal questions. They looked at my ringless hand, my tired eyes, my baby photos taped inside a desk drawer. They made assumptions. I let them. Sometimes silence is safer than truth, but at night, when the city slept, I studied. Online courses, certifications, numbers made sense when nothing else did. Balance sheets didn't lie. Accounts didn't abandon you in winter. Every exam I passed felt like reclaiming a piece of myself Ethan had tried to erase. The first time I ran into someone from my old life, it felt like a punch to the ribs. It was Ethan's cousin. She froze when she saw me, eyes flicking to Hope in my arms. "So, it's true," she said slowly. I didn't ask what she meant. "They said you cheated," she continued. "That the baby wasn't his." Hope reached out and grabbed my finger. I met her cousin's eyes calmly. "Do you believe that?" She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. Truth doesn't need shouting. It waits. Years moved quietly. Hope took her first steps on the cracked linoleum of that basement apartment. She said her first word there, too. "Mama." I cried so hard I scared her. We moved again, this time into a small but sunny apartment. I bought secondhand furniture, painted the walls myself, planted flowers in pots on the windowsill. For the first time since that night in the snow, I felt safe. Margaret visited often. "You're doing it," she said proudly. "You're building something no one can take." The letter arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. A legal envelope. My hands went cold as I opened it. Ethan was filing for parental rights. My knees buckled. After all these years, after silence, lies, abandonment, he wanted to claim her. Not because he loved her, but because he had lost everything else. I sat on the floor for a long time, Hope playing nearby, unaware that her world was shaking. That night I didn't sleep. I gathered documents, messages, medical records, proof of abandonment, and something else too. Strength. Court was colder than winter. Ethan didn't look at me at first. When he did, his eyes widened, not with guilt but surprise. I wasn't broken. I wasn't begging. I was standing. He spoke about regret, about youth, about mistakes. I spoke about midnight, about snow, about a pregnant woman dragging a suitcase through the dark. I didn't cry. The judge listened, and when it was over, the gavel came down softly but final. Full custody. Supervised visits only. Ethan's face collapsed. Mine stayed calm. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply stands firm. Outside the courthouse, snow began to fall again. Hope looked up, laughing, trying to catch flakes on her tongue. I picked her up, breathing in her warmth. Winter had tried to take everything from me. Instead, it taught me how to endure. The first supervised visit was scheduled for Saturday morning. I dressed Hope carefully, warm sweater, tiny boots, her favorite blue scarf. She was 5 years old now, old enough to sense tension but too young to understand betrayal. "Who are we seeing, Mama?" she asked innocently. I paused. "A man who helped bring you into the world," I said gently. "But he doesn't know you yet." The visitation center smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. The walls were painted in bright colors meant to feel cheerful, but nothing could soften the weight in the air. Ethan was already there, waiting. He stood when he saw her, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked afraid. Hope hid slightly behind my leg, peeking out with curious eyes. That's her," he whispered, voice breaking. "Yes," I replied. "That's the child you said wasn't your problem." He flinched. The supervisor cleared her throat. "You may begin." Ethan knelt in front of Hope, unsure what to do with his hands. "Hi," he said awkwardly. I'm Ethan." Hope studied him carefully, then asked the question that shattered him. "Are you the snowman?" He blinked. "The what?" "The snowman Mama told me about," she said seriously. "The one who left her outside when it was cold." The room went silent. I hadn't planned on that story coming back. But children hear more than we think. Ethan's face drained of color. "I didn't mean," he started. Hope turned to me. "Mama," he looked sad. "I know, baby," I said softly, "but sad doesn't always mean safe." She nodded, as if she understood more than her years allowed. The visits continued. Each time, Ethan tried harder. He brought toys, snacks, stories he clearly practiced in advance. Hope accepted them politely, but without attachment. Love cannot be rushed. Trust cannot be demanded, and children can sense truth long before adults admit it. One afternoon, after a visit, Ethan stopped me in the hallway. "She doesn't know me," he said quietly. "She doesn't feel anything." I met his eyes. That's what abandonment feels like from the other side. He swallowed hard. "I was angry back then," he said. "I thought you ruined my life." I laughed softly, not from humor, but disbelief. "You threw a pregnant woman into a snowstorm," I said. "And you think anger explains that?" He had no answer. Weeks later, the truth finally caught up with him. A paternity test court ordered. The results were undeniable. Hope was his, not just biologically. She carried his eyes, his stubborn chin, even the same crooked smile he once loved in the mirror. When the papers arrived, he didn't call. He showed up at my door. "I destroyed everything," he said, voice hollow. "Didn't I?" I looked past him, into the home I had built from nothing, warm lights, laughter, safety. "Yes," I said, "but not everything." He looked hopeful. "You didn't destroy us," I continued, "because you were never part of what we became." That was the moment he understood. Not everything broken can be repaired. Hope asked about him once more after that. "Will the snowman come again?" I knelt beside her. "Only if he learns how to stay." She thought about that for a long time. Then she shook her head. "I like warm people better." So did I. The final visit came quietly. Ethan hugged Hope goodbye. Awkward and gentle. She patted his shoulder. "Be nice," she told him seriously. He smiled through tears. "I'll try." When he left, he didn't look back. Some endings don't need drama, they need acceptance. That winter, snow fell again. But this time, it stayed outside. Inside, we were warm, together. The winter after the last visit was quieter than the ones before it. Not softer but calmer. Hope had started school. Every morning she pressed her nose to the window, checking the sky. "Is it snowing today?" she'd ask. Sometimes it was. Sometimes it wasn't. Either way, she'd pull her boots and scoff with the same excitement. Because this time, snow no longer meant fear. It meant play. It meant home. And that still amazed me. Margaret fell ill that winter, not suddenly, not dramatically, just slowly. She grew tired more often, sat longer, smiled softer. One evening while Hope colored on the floor, Margaret reached for my hand. "There's something I need you to know," she said gently. I felt my chest tighten. She told me she had rewritten her will months earlier. "I don't have children," she said, "but I have family." I tried to protest. She squeezed my hand. "You didn't just survive that night. You changed my life too." When she passed a few weeks later, snow fell quietly like the world was holding its breath. She left us the house, the same warm place where I had first held my newborn daughter, the place where a stranger had become a mother to me when I needed one most. Hope asked why I was crying. "These are grateful tears," I told her. "They mean love stays even when people go." Spring came slowly. The snow melted. Flowers pushed through the soil. Light lingered longer each evening. I took Hope back to the street where it had all begun. The old house looked smaller now. Colder. Empty. We didn't stop. We didn't need to. Some doors close forever so better ones can open. On Hope's 7th birthday, she asked a question I had been waiting for. Why didn't my father stay? I took a long breath. "Some people are afraid of responsibility," I said carefully. "And some people don't know how to love when things get hard." She nodded slowly. "Did you get scared?" "All the time," I admitted. "What did you do?" "I kept going anyway." She smiled. "I think I got that from you." That was the moment I knew. I had broken the cycle. That night, snow fell again, light, gentle, almost kind. Hope curled beside me on the couch. "Mama," she whispered, half asleep. "You won, didn't you?" I kissed her forehead. "No," I said softly. "We did. I used to think that night my husband threw me out was the worst moment of my life. Now I know better. It was the moment my real life began. Because sometimes winter doesn't come to end your story. Sometimes it comes to strip everything false away, so you can finally build something real, warm, unbreakable. Years later, people still ask me how I survived that night. The night my husband threw me out at midnight. 7 months pregnant, snow falling like the world had decided to erase me. I usually smile and say I was strong, but the truth is, I wasn't. I was terrified. I was shaking so badly I could barely walk. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know if my baby would survive the cold. I didn't know if I would. What I did know was this: I had already lost everything that could be taken from me. And sometimes, when you reach that point, fear loses its power. Winter tried to break me. It froze my fingers, cracked my skin, and pressed silence into my bones. It watched me walk alone through the dark, carrying a life I hadn't even met yet. But winter didn't know something. I was carrying more than a child. I was carrying endurance. I was carrying memory. I was carrying a future that refused to die quietly. Today, when I watch my daughter run through falling snow, laughing as she catches flakes on her tongue, I understand something I couldn't back then. That night wasn't abandonment, it was release. Release from a man who confused control with love. Release from a house that was warm but empty. Release from a life where I was shrinking to survive. I didn't lose a home that night. I escaped a prison. My daughter will never remember the cold that almost took her. She won't remember the suitcase dragged through snow. She won't remember the bus stop bench or my frozen tears. What she will remember is warmth, a home filled with safety, a mother who stayed, a life built slowly, honestly, with hands that never let go. And that is my greatest victory. The man who threw me out once came back when everything else had left him, but by then, I had learned a truth he never would. Love is not words spoken when it's easy. Love is presence when it's hard. Love is staying, especially in winter. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. I needed peace, and I chose it. Some nights, when the wind howls and snow presses against the windows, I still remember that midnight door closing behind me. But now it doesn't hurt, because I also remember this: every step I took away from that door was a step toward the life I was meant to live. Winter didn't end me. It forged me, and from the coldest night of my life, I built a future that stays warm, no matter how hard the snow falls outside.